Lord Governor, bless the leaders and the people at peace, love, and Prime Minister, all that party, praise to your servants, members of the House, those who make light, life in need. Finally, teach our people to rely on your their responsibility. Make wise decisions safely. Hallowed be thy name.
Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our
Thine power and the glory
forever and ever.
Major. This House is in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, April 25th, 2023 to be deferred.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
The question is that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred. Her Excellency, the President, to the Honourable the House of Assembly. Her Excellency, the President, wishes it to inform the Honourable the House of Assembly that she will be absent from the country on duty leave during the period of 2nd to 11th May 2023. Her Excellency further wishes to inform the Honourable the House of Assembly that, in accordance with the provisions of Section 33 of the Constitution, the Very Reverend Dr. Jeffrey Douglas Gibson will perform the functions of the Office of the President for the period of Her Excellency's absence. Signed, President, State House, Barbados, 27th April 2023. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm commanded to lay the report of the Standing Orders Committee. As Parliament would be aware, we would have met recently on the 25th of April of this year with a view to being able to establish 3 additional standing joint select committees, one for a committee on governance and policy matters, a committee on economic and productive sectors, and a committee on social sector and the environment.
Amendment. Honorable Leader, Government Business.
I am commanded to lay the annual report and audited financial statements of the Barbados National Oil Company for the year ended 31st of March 2022. Mr. Speaker, I am commanded to lay the report of the Standing Orders Committee. The committee met on Tuesday, the 25th of April, to be able to consider and to agree to the addition of 3 standing committees. Those committees, joint committees, being the Committee on Governance and Policy Matters, the Committee on Economic and Productive Sectors, and the Committee on Social Sector and the Environment.
Honorable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42 subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
The question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. Honorable Leader, Government Business.
I beg to move, Mr. Speaker, a resolution to approve in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown Lands Vesting and Disposal Act, Cap 225, the vesting in the Barbados Agricultural Development and Marketing Corporation of the parcel of land, the property of the state, situated at Black Rock in the parish of St. Michael for community agricultural purposes.
To the government business. Joe, back to government. Revert to government business, sir. Order number 12, in the name of the Honourable Minister of Housing, Lands and Maintenance, to move the passing of a resolution to approve in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown Lands Vesting and Disposal Act, Chapter 225, the vesting in the Barbados Agricultural Development and Marketing Corporation of the parcel of land, property of the state, situate at Black Rock in the parish of St. Michael for community agricultural purposes.
Honorable Member for St. George South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A pleasant good morning to all. And I begin by recognizing that we all had a wonderful weekend. And despite the wonders of the weekend, we're here this morning again to do the country's business, and properly at third and early. And I want to congratulate my colleagues for giving me such a wonderful weekend, a spirited weekend, from Friday back to yesterday. Indeed, it was a wonderful weekend. Thank to you, the Almighty God, for sparing our lives and bringing us back here safely. And while I don't want to get into the incident that occurred, but I think we had a relatively good weekend in terms of Barbadians coming out to enjoy themselves without being disagreeable or without engaging in any level of warfare or tyranny. I think we had a relatively good weekend. But that is not my remit this morning. My remit here is to discuss this resolution pertaining to the vesting of 2 parcels of land when added their 3.35 acres situated at the psychiatric hospital. And this land is to be vested in Barbados Agricultural Development Management Corporation, known to us as BADMC. And just to give a little bit of background, Mr. Speaker and members of the Chamber, the area of the land to be vested in BADMC was vested in the state, formerly the Crown, by virtue of a Section 2 of an act back in the 1890s called the Lunatic Act, and a conveyance dated October 7, 1892, from James Goulburn Williams et al. To the Executive Committee of the Island of Barbados, and this was recorded in the land registry of this island on February 7th, 1893 as D number 95. So, Mr. Speaker, the entire land at Psychiatric Hospital was in the 1890s made up of Jenkinsville, Rosemont, and Foxborough plantations. And this land originally consisted of some 70 acres or 28.33 hectares. And this parcel of land at the time extended from what is now on Highway 1 down to the sea at Brandon's Beach. The history would show that the psychiatric hospital was opened in 1893 and assumed the name Jenkins, and I guess from the plantation, Jenkinsville plantation, I guess that's where the name came from. And much stigma became attached to the name Jenkins, stemming basically from the lack of understanding at the time and misinformation regarding mental health issues, which confronted Barbadians for years. And we referred to the psychiatric hospital in those days as the madhouse or the mental. And, you know, we have come from the 1890s with that stigma, and I want to congratulate successive governments for getting rid of that stigma associated with mental health. Mental health is real. And we saw during COVID how COVID impacted many of our citizens. And we had a number of mental health issues creeping in to our society, more than average. And I recall going to that Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Community Empowerment, and the first speech that I made was the whole impact of mental health, the impact that COVID had on the youth, and how the mental health challenges have crept up on us as a society. And we can see from then to now that we have progressed as a nation, and we have sought to treat with mental health issues in a progressive and a more, what I call, policy-driven, directive way. We recognize that mental health is just it should be treated as just as any sickness, any NCD, and we must give it the necessary priority that is due to it. And we have come from the 1890s to present. And again, while that is not my remit this morning, I still think it is very critical that we recognize where we came from and the stigma associated with mental health back in the 1890s. And where we are now as a country and how progressive we have been as a government in putting the necessary policies in place to address and to treat seriously with mental health issues. But, Mr. Speaker, parts of the hospital lands were previously removed to provide for public housing, also for schools, Deacon Primary and Deacon Senior School, and also for recreation facilities. And there's also a daycare and a play park in that area. So that 70 acres of land over the years, we would have seen development in that area, in the Deacon's area. And the lands that we're seeking to invest in the BADMC this morning, this is in close proximity to the densely populated communities of Deacon's Farm, Forneyhurst, Rosemont, three housing developments located on lands which were previously part of the estate acquired by the state and which were subsequently vested in the National Housing Corporation between the periods 1968 and 69 and later 1981 and 1982. Starting first with Deacon's Farm. And we have here this morning in the chamber the parliamentary representative for St. Michael Northwest. And I know he's pleased this morning to see us debating this resolution. And I know he would have his say when I'm finished, along with others. So we have three housing developments together, providing housing for some 554 families, close to 600 now. And each housing unit, and I use the word densely populated because within the farm, each housing unit accommodate on average 6 persons per household. And while I'm hearing from the member for St. Michael Southeast, F only 6, but six is still a lot based on the size of the units. And we're speaking about units from in the 1960s. And we have provided for some close to 600 families, which is important. So this land is not only for agricultural purposes, but to show where we have come from in the 1890s to present. Now, Mr. Speaker, this brings me to a topic that I've mentioned several times in this chamber, a topic by the name of urban regeneration. And this vesting proposal aligns well with government's policy for urban regeneration and renewal, which by definition is a planning approach that attempts to remedy the social and economic problems of an urban area, including the improvement of both the physical and environmental aspects. And it will support the government's effort regarding the delivery of the Sustainable Development Goals, especially that goal, the SDG goal number 11, which speaks to making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, and resilient and sustainable by 2030. And what does this entail? This includes the introduction of eco-friendly practices and green spaces into the urban environment. And the introduction of such measures could greatly assist the countries with slowing down the effects of climate change by contributing to a reduction in air pollution and carbon dioxide emissions. And we know where we are. We want more green spaces. We want to make sure that we're greening our environment and we're not only addressing climate change from the standpoint of carbon dioxide emissions and the measurement, but we also want to ensure that we're planting food. And that is what this resolution speaks to in the area. So, studies have shown over the years that providing access to green spaces can also assist with improving mental health of residents in urban districts. And in fact, researchers from Denmark University of ours has found that citizens who grew up with the least green space nearby had as much as 55% increased risk of developing psychiatric disorders such as depression, anxiety, and substance abuse in the latter years. And this is nothing strange to us because we recognize that in some areas that are densely populated, and I don't want to, thank you, sir. And I don't want to get into any name calling within areas because some of these issues that we are seeking to address frontally in terms of substance abuse and within the urban corridor, they're historical. And as we seek to improve the urban corridor, urban regeneration, not only in the city but the surrounding areas, I am confident that we will address the areas such as substance abuse, depression, and indeed mental health issues. So, Mr. Speaker, you can see that the vesting of this land in an urban corridor that is densely populated will serve many purposes. But I wish to move to an area, basically the global movement towards urban farming. More and more countries, Mr. Speaker, are seeing the importance of not only creating green spaces within the urban communities, but linking that to the establishment of urban farms as part of its planning for the creation of sustainable cities. And we can seek to define what urban farming is, several definitions, but urban farming refers to the growing of plants and the rearing of animals primarily for food and other domestic use within a city or a town and its environments. And it may extend to activities such as production, the processing, the marketing, and delivery of farming products. And urban farming is becoming a growing movement globally as countries focus on increasing efforts on ensuring not only enhancing food security, but also nutritional security for our citizens. And we saw recently the shocks to food systems brought about by factors such as COVID-19 pandemic and the increasing food prices across the globe and natural disasters, making it critical, Mr. Speaker, that policy measures are indeed put in place to address the matter of food security. And closer to home here, Mr. Speaker, we have seen the increasing cost of basic food items. And as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw the reduction in disposable income as a result of a level of unemployment which we treated with over the last 2 years. And certainly we saw the potential threat to food security at the household level. And we saw the increasing cost of living and the war within the Ukraine and Russia, the potential war, impacted supplies in our country, not only commercial, but within the retail and the food sector. The high prices of imports, the high cost of shipping, several things impacted our food security. And it is here that I wish to congratulate the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security for the work they have done in pushing root crop production in this country, not only root crop production in this country, but ensuring that we have sufficient meat and food to sustain households in this country. And I hear this morning, I'm seeing the permanent secretary within the ministry and the member for St. Philip South, I want to congratulate you, both of you publicly this morning for the sterling work that you are doing. Not that you have done, but that you are doing. And I will speak to quite a few of them this morning to ensure that food security is indeed paramount in Barbadians' minds, and the need to grow within your backyards. And what we have done as a government to create policies to ensure that the average Barbadian can have a piece of this land to farm and produce food for their households. And that is fundamental, that is critical. And Mr. Speaker, as I get into the essence of this resolution, you will see that the impact of a few acres, 5,000 square feet of land, 3,000 square feet of land to farm, you will see the impact this will have on families. Because when you can provide food for yourself, then you have more disposable income to spend on your children. And this is fundamental, because when you look at the household income, and I'm no economist, but I run a household, and you can see the amount of money we spend on food if we are supposed to eat healthy as well, maintaining healthy lifestyles. You will see that a large portion of our disposable income is spent on food. Not on clothing, but on food. So, Mr. Speaker, resolutions such as this one, while it may seem to some as a simple resolution, resolutions such as this one will send a message to the country that this government is indeed serious about food security. And not only about food security, but is serious also about addressing the impact of NCDs on our citizens in this country. Because when you plant food, you are not planting unhealthy food. You're planting healthy food that can help you address the issues of NCDs within your household. Not only would exercise do it, but what you eat is fundamental to a healthy lifestyle. And when you go to any nutritionist, he or she will tell you, yes, you can get in all the exercise that you want, but if you are not eating healthy, then you're back to square one. So all of the fatty foods and stuff, and I'm proud to see that the Ministry of Education has taken it upon themselves to address the issue of sugars within the drinks and also within the food. Because I heard my son saying to me that at his school, he no longer able to drink all these sweet drinks. And he said that to me as this term started. And I'm proud, member for St. Philip West, that you have carried on the good work started by the member for St. Michael Southeast in addressing the issue of healthy foods within our school system. And I think that is fundamental. If we are supposed to prepare Barbados for 50 years down the road and have a healthy society and reduce the impact of NCDs on our citizens, then we have to start within the schools. And that is a serious message. Children usually, and I can say it for myself, dictate how parents operate in terms of the value system, because the little children don't lie. And when a child can say to you the first day of school that there is a policy now at his school to address the issues of sugars within drinks and he can't drink these type of drinks, then I think we're on the right path. Because that transcends then into the household. Because when your child tells you that he cannot drink a sweet drink, then you don't buy it. And you don't drink it. You have to lead by example, as simple as it sounds. And I experience it as a parent. So I'm speaking from a position of experience here. And I say to the public, this government has done exceptionally well in the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, and also within the Ministry of Education in addressing NCDs in this country. And the fight is still on, because we have to deal with an aging population who, for want of a better word, didn't know any better 50 years ago or 40 years ago, a member for the city. So they came up in a system where the issue of healthy living and NCDs were not as significant an impact in society as it is now. According to the World Health Organization, NCDs are responsible for the death of 41 million people each year. This is equivalent to 74% of all deaths globally, of which 77% are in the low and middle income countries. I'm going to repeat this because this is serious. The World Health Organization states that NCDs are responsible for the death of some 41 million people each year, which is 74% of all deaths globally, of which 77% are in the low and middle income countries. So what that is telling you, countries such as ours, we have high incidence of NCDs. And cardiovascular diseases account for most NCD deaths worldwide, followed by cancer, chronic respiratory disease, including asthma, and diabetes. So there is a close correlation, there is a direct correlation between cardiovascular diseases and NCDs. Modifiable behaviors such as unhealthy diets and physical activity or physical inactivity are two of the risk factors that make persons vulnerable to the effects of NCDs. And I said that earlier in Bayesian parlance. Eating badly, lack of exercise are two of the risk factors that make people vulnerable to the effect of NCDs. And while I'm not going to dwell on the NCDs issue, even though it is critical, the 2022 Global Nutrition Report has reported that Barbados has shown limited progress towards achieving the diet-related NCD target set. According to that report, diabetes is estimated to affect 15.8% of adult women and 12.2% of adult men. And it went on further to say that 34.7% of adult women aged 18 years and over and 17.1% of adult men are living with obesity, while 12.2% of our children under 5 years of age are overweight. And these are worrying statistics, as we as a society must be concerned about it. So when this resolution is introduced into this parliament this morning, it is not just land that will be vested in BADMC, but it is land that will be used for agriculture, for farming. And I said to my colleague from St. Philip West, I don't want to preempt the essence of the resolution, but I said to my colleague in St. Philip South, that I would like to see across the length and breadth of this country, and I will speak to some of the initiatives of that ministry shortly. But I would like to see across the length and breadth of this country, every single constituency or parish allocated some 2 acres for farming. And not just for farming, for community farming. If you want to use the term for low-income farming, people within the low-income bracket for farming in this country. And that has several positives about it. We're not only addressing the issue of NCDs, but we're addressing some of the social issues across our society. So a member for St. Philip South, I know you're doing exceptional work in this area of food security, the feed program, Project Care, I will speak to shortly. Those are some programs that we need to allow this country to know what you're doing. But I want to see some more acreage across the length and breadth of Barbados. And I'm going closer to home. I want to see some more acres in St. George South. Because we are known as the bread basket. And with the land, we can provide bread. So while the member may say to me that I own the land, and he told me so last Thursday in the job, he said, you own the land. You're the Ministry of Housing. You own the land. But I want to see not only us building houses, but I want to see a lot of this land, arable land, put into agriculture. And I know there's a thrust to bring back backyard farming. I know the former Prime Minister back then, he spoke about it and people laugh. Our current Prime Minister, now she speaks about it, and I hope no one is laughing. Because I grew up in Allerton, St. George, and I often speak to my upbringing. My grandfather was a farmer, and he had less than half acre. And he produced some of the best sweet potatoes. I am a country boy. I grew up on the eddos, the yams, the cassava, the carrots, the beets in the backyard, along with the pork and the sheep, the pig and the sheep. But my good friend, he can tell you, because he frequents the house. I won't say who, but I am pointing at him. He frequents the house, and he knows very well that he can walk to the backyard of the Sutherlands and he can find something planted, even though the old man is now 87 this year, you know. But that is how we came up. That is how we came up. And I need to see Barbadians or this country return to those days where backyard farming indeed is just as important and it's just as spectacular as our crop over season or how we celebrate heroes there. We must create some garden projects across Barbados where we recognize households in a major way, create a day or weeks or months where we recognize households, go across the length and breadth of this country and recognize them in a major way for backyard farming and how much they can produce, not just in terms of quantity, but the quality. And those who sit in this chamber, my colleagues and friends, we need to come up with some system whereby we can judge our people within the communities, not only in the urban corridor, but we reward them for contributing to food security in this country. Find a way. We reward persons in a good way. I'm speaking for coming out with the best band in this country and revelers. We reward them. And I think the time has come, something as serious as agriculture. The impact of NCDs and mental health, diabetes, obesity. These are the things that touch the core. And we have to focus more on rewarding our people. The small income group, I'm not talking about the large commercial farmers because they sell their produce, but when you go around our communities, we can have a best garden per parish or two. You determine, member for the city, I can see you nodding. I know you will come up with it. You're very creative, you're very innovative. A best garden within the parishes. So, Mr. Speaker, I now move back to urban farming. And you can speak about the idea, member, for the city. You know, this is a free-for-all parliament where we can get up and share good ideas. And I know you're making your notes, member, for the city. Urban farming, by its nature, occurs in areas where there's limited land space available. And production in the urban corridor must therefore depend on not traditional farming because you don't have the land space, but innovative techniques and the use of technology. I know the member for St. Philip South agrees with me. Because when you have limited space, then you have to get into greenhouse and shade house production and vertical farming, container gardens. These are the things that the Ministry of Agriculture, they are focusing on. Backyard gardens, street landscaping, where this involves the beautification of streets. And this has the advantage of impacting and reducing stormwater runoff, the member for Christchurch, West Central. These are things that when we really dive into, we see that these small things can give us tremendous impact and improve the lives of our citizens. Greenhouse and shade house production. Protected agricultural systems such as shade house and greenhouse production allow for the growing of crops in limited spaces. And not only where you have limited land spaces, but the advantage of year-round production and not only seasonal. So when you utilize greenhouse production and shade house, you know, we can hear about, oh, this isn't the season to grow yams. But we have the technology now that you can produce year around, month and month and month on, 12 months a year. And that is what the Ministry of Agriculture is focusing on. I think by accident you were here this morning, Permanent Secretary, or you have a bill. Huh? Deliberately. Okay, he's here to hear the minister and not me, his friend. So I don't want the link of him being here and my presentation this morning. Vertical farms, which allows for production upwards. And I mentioned that, thus minimizing the space required. Container gardens. And I'm certain I heard the member for St. Philip South mention, I think this was in 2018 when you assumed the role, and we had several discussions. And he said he has been to some place, I'm not sure, Israel, but he saw persons growing broccoli in containers. Container farming, when you have limited space. Hearts Gap as well, right? Vegetables and herbs. Let me stress the word herbs can be grown simply by using containers. I didn't say herb. Have to be careful with the language in this Lord chamber. I am recorded. And at Halton, right? So Hearts Gap and at Halton, we see container farming, broccoli being grown, lettuce being grown. So we have the technology now, thanks to the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, for giving the citizens the opportunity to explore with limited land space or land spaces such as this one. Mr. Speaker, there are a number of initiatives being implemented by the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and National Security, all geared towards enhancing national food security by increasing food production and decreasing the food import bill. I'm certain that the member for St. Philip South and the others can speak on our food in Port Bill. And as a former Minister of Commerce and still a member of the Cabinet, and I sit and I'm privy to discussions on our thrust to reduce the food in Port Bill. And we know that in 2019, the Farmers Empowerment and Enfranchisement Drive, what we call the feed program, was launched in 2019. And this program was launched with a view to incentivize new entrants into the sector, and also on capitalizing the industry, encouraging the adoption of innovative approaches to food production, as well as ensuring that agriculture becomes a viable career option for young people. I want to congratulate again the Minister of Agriculture and Food and National Security and his team for launching this program, the feed program, and it is bearing fruit. I want us to congratulate him and his team. This program provides training including apiculture, traditional and contemporary farming methods, and livestock husbandry, and the lease of land to successful graduates, and the provision of startup inputs. At the time of the startup, the feed program was targeted towards young people between the ages, I think, member for St. Philip South, of 18 and 35. So this is one of the programs that indeed have brought back some recognition to farming in a major way. Our young people now are saying to us, in my bread basket, on Wednesdays when I see my people, other than housing, other than roads, the majority of persons want to be entrepreneurs. They want some of the land in the bread basket, Minister, member for St. Philip South. They need some of the land in the bread basket to farm. And I'm going to make sure that we work as a team, member for St. Philip South. Not only on behalf of the good people of Deacon's Farm with this resolution, and not only on behalf of the good people of St. George South that I will be begging for, but on the entire country, because we need to see more of these programs across the length and breadth of this country. And as I sit with you to discuss lands for housing, we must have a caucus to discuss lands not only for urban regeneration, but for rural agriculture. Because that is where it started. That is where the name, the bread basket, came from. The rural agriculture, the backyard farming, the number of plantations and our forefathers and our grandparents who worked at the plantations, farming, to earn a living. And I'm happy, sir, that you recognize those plantation workers and you went at Edgecombe and you ensure that the days, and the member for St. Michaelis, he often speaks about it, the days of our grandparents going to urinate in the cane field while they're working, those days are over. Thanks to you, the member for St. Philip South and the Ministry of Agriculture. Thanks to you. Those days are over. This is a government who is treating with agriculture, giving it the necessary seriousness of purpose and recognition that it deserves. So after the feed program, I now move to the LEARS Urban Land Lease and Food Security Program. And again, you need to give the member and his team, member for St. Philip South and his team, a pat on the back. Because this public-private partnership, and again, we cannot do it on our own as a government. We don't have all the land to provide for housing or agriculture. We have to partner with the private sector. And that is why you see me on a weekly basis across the length and breadth of this country not begging, but negotiating for land so we can build houses. Because government, we don't own all the land in this country. We own a fair set. We own a large amount, but we don't own all that can build the necessary houses that we need to build in this term of office. The 10,000 houses that we have proposed to the country that we will build, government don't have the land to build 10,000. That is why we have to partner with the private sector, joint venture partnerships. That is why we have to acquire land, go across the length and breadth of this country. That's why the whole aspect of planning gains was achieved at Lower Burning, 40 acres. Because persons sit with government and negotiate with us, we would like to utilize so and so. And as a result of passing money, government accept the fact that we have to create the enabling environment in this country. And we're saying to you, you know, you don't always have to bring money, but you might have something that we need that can help the citizens of this country. And that is how planning gains came into play. And that's how we have acquired planning gains land at Lower Burning, 40 acres, along with Bright Hall in St. Lucie, some 70 acres. So a member for St. Philip South will be talking. So the Lears Land Lease Program, this is a program under an agreement with C.O. Williams where we have leased some, I think, 77 acres of land. Member, thank you, for crop production to the BADMC. And the farmers allocated under this project were provided with support through government providing irrigation fittings, water storage tank, support concrete bases to assist with their farming activities. But critical to this project, Mr. Speaker and members of the chamber and those listening, this land lease program has a major water catchment facility, a capacity of some 21 million US gallons, which will be used for irrigation purposes. And the infrastructure section of this catchment will be provided by C.O. Williams, which will allow for the abstraction of the captured rainwater for the distribution to the farmers. And the finishing work will include a water treatment facility for separation of oils and hydrocarbons contained in the surface runoff water from the roadways. So, Mr. Speaker, this, again, in addition to the feed program, the Lears Land Lease Program, thus far, we have seen some 31 commercial farmers who are farming on a minimum of 1 acre. They have 1 to 2 acres approximately to farm on. And then we have the smaller allotment gardens ranging from 5,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet of land. And by the end of next week, I'm being told by the good member for St. Philip South that we will have, in addition to the 31 commercial farmers that we have thus far at Lears, we will have some 105 allotment small farmers that will bring our total of farmers to 136 by the end of next week at the Lears Land Lease Program. Good work again, member for St. Philip South and your team. Salute the permanent secretary as well. Mr. Speaker, this brings me to the essence of this paper. The vesting of these lands, 3.35 acres in BAD MC. And Mr. Speaker, these lands will be vested in BAD MC under the Project CARE program. And what is Project CARE? The Ministry of Agriculture and Food and National Security launched an agricultural program, nutritional security, sorry, launched an agricultural program in March of the year 2022, known as Community Agricultural Response and Empowerment Project. Herein we have to refer to as Project CARE. And this Project CARE program is available to individuals, communities, and social entities across the length and breadth of Barbados, seeking to establish what we call community gardens and our forms of agricultural-based community project. And like I said earlier, Project CARE, Mr. Speaker, is a national response to the global food crisis, which is upon us as a consequence of both economic and logistical factors, which has been triggered by the conflict or the war, we call it, between Ukraine and Russia, and also the lingering effects of COVID-19. And I mentioned earlier that this program can impact what we're seeing, the steady increases of NCDs, and also the rising food costs can be addressed through this program. And it aims at promoting household and nutritional food security. And I mentioned this earlier, backyard gardening, farming. And Project CARE allows small garden-sized plots of less than 1 acre. And these 1 acre lots or less are being allocated to vulnerable groups in society, such as persons that are unemployed, persons living below or bordering the poverty line, and last but by no means least, is targeting women in society. I want to thank you, member for St. Philip South, and your team. This is a wonderful program. We believe that this project will have the benefit of building and strengthening community bonds and relationships through a deepening of social ties and linkages, along with fostering the development of micro-responses to household food and nutritional security, which we can define as having access at all times to enough food for an active, healthy life for all household members. This, to me, is one of the most impactful programs launched by the Ministry of Agriculture. And I said earlier, simply because it is touching the lives of the average man and the average woman, and across the length and breadth of this country. And I called earlier for more projects, such as this one. And I call now for the engagement, more engagement with the private sector. We can only build a healthy society. We can only build a strong economy. We can only bridge the gaps of the social classes in this country if we partner with the private sector in building out a wholesome society. And I'm calling on the private sector to join with government on this project, Project CARE. You know, there's statistics to show that we waste a lot of food. And I don't want to go there worldwide, but I'm not speaking only to our country within the commercial sector. But many of the retail companies and wholesalers throw away a lot of food. And probably before I sit down or during my wrap-up, I will research and bring the stats to show you that a lot of food is thrown away. After what they call the best before date, a lot of food is thrown away. And I am calling on the private sector again. We know that we have, I don't want to call it a major food crisis, but the price of food is rising across the globe as a result of the externalities that I just listed. And I'm calling on the retailers and the wholesalers. So when you see the best before dates approaching or food that can be consumed, we have many groups across this country. We have the Salvation Army, we have a lot of them, and I know some give to the Salvation Army, but there are other entities, there are other persons that are within that low income group approaching what we use as poverty, the word poverty. And some of this food can be donated to these groups, to the churches especially. We don't want you to donate them to our political parties, but you can go in to the organizations, the sporting groups, the social groups, and donate these food as a result of throwing it away. And it occurs across the globe. I will wrap up by stating bringing the stats to this chamber to let you know how much food is wasted globally as a result of the best before date and after use date. Food is wasted, thrown away, when we have persons living in poverty across the globe. And I'm calling on our private sector to lead the charge. We are leading the charge in climate change as we seek to address this climate crisis. Let's reduce our wastage in food in this country. Let's come up with innovative ways as a private sector. Sit with government, sit with the Minister of Commerce and the Minister of Agriculture and their teams, and come up with innovative ways how we can reduce our wastage of food in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, Project CARE, as it is referred to, has taken steps to support the objectives through the engagement with private entities, and I mentioned that. This project has benefited from donations of baby chickens to vulnerable households across Barbados, across every single parish and constituency, if you want to narrow it down to that. Donation of hand tools and seedlings. I want to thank the private sector for that. But like I said earlier, I'm not criticizing the private sector because they have come on board with us in the Lears Land Lease program. They have come on board with us in the Project CARE program. But I want us now to focus, member for St. Philip South, on reducing wastage in this country in a major way. Because we have right on our doorsteps the issue of NCDs, the issues of obesity among our children. And I quoted the stats in this country. It is a worrying stat for me. And I guess it is a worrying stat for every single Barbadian and householder, every single parent. And we know the price of food as a result of the externalities that I listed earlier can impact how householders or low-income households eat. So I'm asking us to consider our ways and get wise, get wiser. Go back to the basics. We learn a lot from our seniors. And I'm certain most of you who grew up in a household with your grandmother, grandfather, great aunt, they will tell you that they never went to the store to buy pre-cooked food yet, or the pre-cooked food they bought were limited, but they focused on ground provisions and food from the backyard. And they live long. And look at the stats in this country, the longevity of our citizens. It is how they eat. It is fundamental. But Mr. Speaker, this land that is being invested in BADMC is within the constituency of St. Michael Northwest. And there have been interest in pursuing community-based agricultural programs in St. Michael Northwest prior to this vesting of this land. And we are seeing the increase within St. Michael Northwest of persons seeking to engage in agriculture-based programs through community groups, through the school, including the Deacons Primary School, through a few church groups. They have been inquiring about the project and how they can get involved in Project CARE. And I mentioned one of the constraints in such a densely populated area has been the availability and suitability of lands to pursue these agricultural initiatives. So this proposed acquisition of 3.35 acres of land from the psychiatric hospital would be beneficial to the Deacons community in many ways. Minister of Education, 3.35 acres. Some of these produce can go towards the school meal service. We have supermarkets, prominent supermarkets in Black Rock, and I'm hoping that some of these 3.35 acres will be utilized to supply the supermarkets in Black Rock, along Black Rock Main Road. I shall not call the names. Supply the schools, the Young Women's Christian Association, even the psychiatric hospital itself, the Nightingale's Children's Village. These are all the various entities within the Deacons area. The Deacons Farm Housing Unit, whether it's Ferniehurst, it is whichever is Deacons, I think there are 3 housing units down there, housing close to 600 citizens of this country. And 3.35 acres should be able to supply food within that community. And the member for St. Michael Northwest, I know you're on board with this project, and I'm urging you to focus on these supermarkets, supplying the schools through the Ministry of Education. I don't know how that one works. You can't breach policy. You probably have to go through school meals. The Young Women's Christian Association and the psychiatric hospital, which is within the Ministry of Health. But Mr. Speaker, these projects would also create self-employment for individuals. These projects would also create the training to individuals in small-scale farming. This project will create the interest and develop the agricultural interest among the young people in Deacons Farm. This project will create healthier eating habits among the people. And this project, and critical to me, and I know critical to you, the member for the city, and the member for St. Joseph, uniting communities through agriculture. That we are currently faced with. So projects and agricultural projects such as this one, now envisaged when we vest this 3.35 acres, this will greatly contribute to assisting the government in solving some of its social issues. Targeting the boys on the block who are interested and willing to participate. And I recall when I was Minister of Youth, I toured the Deacons with you the then member and still member of St. Michael Northwest. And we toured. And I got some beans, some string beans to carry home. Because we didn't tour to. When I asked the guys what the price of these goods were, and I would like to buy some, they say, you can't buy anything from us. This government is doing such a wonderful job to us, and they give us some string beans and some of the herbs. You know, I didn't want to take it, but, you know, they would feel discriminated against if I said no. So I am one of the boys, and I took them, you know, and I was happy to see that within that area, these guys have started the journey towards sustainable agriculture within communities. But then I became the Minister of Housing. And here I was touring again the psychiatric hospital, looking at these 3.35 acres to acquire, so that the Deacons Farm community, the community group, can indeed engage in wholesome activity, take the boys off the block, engage their minds daily in other things. You know, there's a saying that the devil find work for idle hands, right? So when you are engaged in wholesome activity, there's no idle hands here. You're engaging in activities that can foster good community spirit and address social issues. This project has the potential for encouraging positive youth development, youth discipline, mental well-being, a sense of responsibility, caring for others in the community, respect for self, respect for others, respect for nature. And last but by no means least, this may even assist with engendering a spirit of self-esteem among the young people. You know, some of us, not within this chamber, when I say some of us, I'm talking about people, often write off the youth when you see them sitting down on the block. You know, and I find it is a stigma when we see people sitting down. But I have engaged with persons on the block. Back in 2014, 2015, there was a young man who led a block. And when I spoke to him, he said, this is simple. I can't find a job. And I asked him to send me his CV. When I looked at his CV, he had qualifications, O-levels and OTD training. And all this young man wanted was an opportunity. You know what he said to me? Once I get the opportunity, all of these are going to follow. And that is what I'm talking about, engendering the community spirit and solving issues. You know, there are always leaders from the household to political institutions, and blocks have leaders. Don't let us fool ourselves, and think that this is leaders are only in the House of Parliament and in government and in churches. The blocks have leaders, and leaders have what? Influence. And once the leaders can influence their followers in a positive way, that is what we need to solve most of our issues across the length and breadth of this country, across blocks. So it is anticipated that opportunities such as these will reduce the propensity for persons to be inclined to turn to other activities other than wholesome ones. The opportunity here will allow not only for physical activities, because they are farming, the availability of fresh produce at affordable prices. And this would assist the country, and even member for St. Philip South and the member for St. James South. Because when we look at prices, when we have persons in Deacon's Farm, 3.35 acres, offering prices to the community and supermarkets at a reduced price. Tell me what that does for the others. Member for Sim GM South. It drives the price down. It improves commerce in this country in a major way. So it is important for us as a government to have as many care projects going on across the length and breadth of this country. Because these young men and women, community groups, I guarantee there will not be price gouging. I can swear for them. I guarantee all they want to do is put bread on their tables and send school their children. And they will enhance commerce in this country in a meaningful way. So Minister of Agriculture and Food Security and his team and BADMC must be commended for the work that they are doing, not only to promote food and nutritional security of the country, but to engage the youth in agricultural activities and providing meaningful employment opportunities for the young people of this country. And that is critical. So, Mr. Speaker, the vesting of this 3.35 acres of land in the BADMC is part of a big picture that should be repeated in every single parish. And if we can get it repeated in on every single block. I know the member for St. John, he's working tirelessly on ensuring that these blocks are indeed empowered in his way in other programs. And if we can get programs such as these, not only with the building blocks program, with the small businesses being created, but if we can get agriculture going across the length and breadth, not only in the urban corridor, but in the rural corridors. Let's aim, members, to have one of these programs in every single constituency, and in some that are larger, you need more than one. Let's aim, Mr. Speaker, to empower, not only through the entrepreneurship programs, through the trust loan, not only through the youth programs that the member for St. John are producing on a monthly basis in that ministry. He's doing an excellent job. But in agriculture, because we can grow food with technology, member for St. Philip South, year round. So, Mr. Speaker, in accordance with the provision of Section 5 of the Crown Lands Vesting and Disposal Act, Cap 225 of the laws of Barbados, this stipulates that the ministry may, with the approval of Parliament, sell, lease, exchange, grant, assign, or surrender any land vested in the Crown. It is now proposed to seek the parliamentary approval of the resolution pertaining to the vesting of these two parcels of land, 3.35 acres totally, in the Barbados Agricultural Development and Marketing Corporation for community agricultural purposes. The resolution, Mr. Speaker, has been certified by the Attorney General for introduction into Parliament. And with these remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg that this resolution now pass.
Honourable Member St. Michael Northwest.
Sir, I rise to give my unconditional support towards this resolution pertaining to the vesting of land totaling 13,559.9 square meters, which is approximately 3.35 acres of land that I can honestly say is presently in bush, but will be soon utilized to plant food and to engage in livestock farming. Sir, I first started the St. Michael Northwest Alliance Agricultural Project in late 2019. And how I managed to start this project, sir, surrounds a young man who was incarcerated, and after his release, sir, he came to my constituency office that was formerly located on Deacons Road, asking for a job. And we as parliamentarians and representatives know how difficult it is to find jobs for some persons who were incarcerated for whatever reason. And my question to this young man, sir, I asked at that point in time, what would you like to do? And, you know, most people believe that, you know, having a job in government is the way to go. And he said to me that, you know, he would like to work in sanitation or the Barbados Water Authority or to get into farming. And I said to him, sir, at that point in time, that farming is good. And that would be the best move to make, you know, because there's money in farming. And he said to me, the only problem is to find some land. Sir, and I said to him, well, I will check around and see what I can do. And he did mention to me that there was some land in Rosemont next to the psychiatric hospital wall. And I took some time and I visited the area, sir, just to assess, you know, the area that he was speaking about. And while doing so, I told him, well, I would speak to the Minister of Housing, the former minister, and the former member for St. Andrew, the Honourable George Payne, and the former member, and the member for St. John, former minister in the Ministry of Housing, the Honourable Charles Griffith. Sir, and I reached out in writing to the minister, requesting permission to utilize that said parcel of land situated in Rosemont, Deacons Road. And permission was granted by the minister for me to utilize the land. And I wish to say thank you, sir, to the former minister and to both ministers of housing for obliging and for giving me that opportunity to really start this project. Sir, after the first year and some after the project was started, the young man, along with a few other men from the community, you know, they outgrew the space. And they came back to me and said, Chief, we need to get some more land. And I was amazed, sir, to see the different kind of produce crops that these guys had planted, you know, on that acre and some of land. And I said to them that what I will do, I will try to acquire the land at the back of the psychiatric hospital because, sir, as a young man growing up in Black Rock, I had my days of climbing the mental wall as a boy, you know, playing football and well, I used to climb the mental wall because obviously as a boy playing football and the ball go over the wall, sir, we will have to climb the wall to retrieve the ball, right? So just let me give that clarity. right? And obviously I knew how the back of the psychiatric hospital, is situated. And I wrote the former Minister of Health, the Most Honourable Jeffrey Bostic, former member of the city, requesting permission to utilize the vacant land at the back of the psychiatric hospital. And the good minister at the time wrote back, obviously with a few concerns regarding what I wanted to do. And it was at that time, sir, that the honorable member for St. Michael Northeast found out about the project, and she said to me that, she only knew about it because she read about it in the papers. And I said, well, ma'am, I would like to utilize the land at the back of the psychiatric hospital to really expand the project, because it will also give me the opportunity, sir, to really create more employment for some of the young men who, continue to approach me about work, And the honorable member for St. Michael Northeast gave a directive to have the land vested into the Ministry of Agriculture. And despite it took some time, sir, I must admit that I'm very grateful. And I also want to say a thank you to every member who had a hand in making this become a reality. And it will also allow me, sir, to, expand this project not only for the good people of Deacons, but it will also allow me to create further opportunities to embrace or for the other members of my constituency in St. Stephen's Hill and Blackrock and surrounding areas to also take part in this agriculture project as well. Because one thing that I believe in, sir, as a representative, is creating a level playing field and not having, the share of the pie just going to one area. And I would like to say that, during last year general elections, my slogan was real results with ROE. And as you can see on my manifesto, I have one of the senior young men from the Deacons area, at the front page, outfitted with equipment that was also donated by Deacons Community Venture and Northwest Alliance Foundation to help, expand and push the things that have to be done where this agriculture project is concerned. Sir, I really want to give my unconditional support to things like this, because I believe in creating opportunities, sir, for my constituents and the good people of Barbados. And where this project is concerned, I have a vision and a passion for empowering the young people and people in general within the constituency of St. Michael Northwest, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I was never the type of representative, sir, to give a man a fish just to feed him for a day. But I am the kind of representative that believe in teaching a man how to fish to allow him to feed himself and his family for a lifetime. Sir, I want to really, push more community projects. I want to push the urban farming more within my constituency, sir, because I have a lot of young farmers. I have a lot of young aspiring farmers. And this opportunity, sir, would allow me to be able to create more opportunities for those that, that may not have hope in being able to, fulfill their dreams where farming is concerned. It will allow me to give those that may not have hope a little hope to know that the future is bright, not only with me being the representative, but with them being able to fulfill their dreams, sir, where farming is concerned. And I hope, sir, that one day I will be able to, help these youngsters to invest in a vehicle where they could transport their produce to the various supermarkets, schools like the Minister of Housing mentioned earlier, churches, because things like this, sir, could become viable employment for many to come. And it will also allow me, sir, to keep some of these young men who just sit on the block daily, with nothing to do, hoping to find a job. And, like I said earlier in the beginning, that, sometimes when a young man is incarcerated, sometimes it's very challenging to find employment, especially when you have to go and apply for a police certificate of character. And then there are some employers that, they find it very hard to give some of these young men a second chance in society for whatever reason. And I believe that despite whatever circumstances that led to their being incarcerated, sir, that, we all deserve a second chance in life. And just because a person was incarcerated, it doesn't mean that that young man or woman cannot, return to society with a different mindset, willing to turn their life around, on a positive trajectory. And we, as politicians and parliamentary representatives, need to, give these people a second chance in society to prove themselves. Because we all make mistakes, and I really believe that sometimes you live and you learn, and opportunities, second chances should be given to these people. And I am very pleased, elated about this resolution this morning, and I really cannot wait to see that land now situated at the back of the psychiatric hospital, being utilized to plant food, not only for commercial purposes, but, I know that these young men in the Deacons area, I don't believe in painting everyone with the same brush, but we have these decent young men in the Deacons community, right? And I know that it will benefit some of the households, especially where the elderly is concerned, because a lot of these young men too have a very caring heart and loving heart for the elderly, and they could testify to that. And I know that this project will go a long way. I know that this project will create, further employment. I know that this project will allow me to help take some more of these young men from off the blocks across my constituency, sir. And I wish to thank this government. I wish to thank the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northeast. I wish to thank the Minister of Housing for, bringing this resolution to Parliament today. And I do look forward on doing good things for the good people and the young men of the good constituency of St. Michael Northwest that I was given the privilege and honor to represent. I thank you, sir.
Honourable Member St. Philip South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It will be remiss of me if I didn't use the opportunity to join in this debate for the vesting of 3.35 acres of land to the BADMC in order for us to assist the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest with his Project Care project. Mr. Speaker, I had the privilege to visit the area prior to 2022 with the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest and his team, where we looked at what was taking place there. And I suppose at that time, that early Saturday morning, when I saw the amount of willing young men who were there showing me what they were doing, and at the same time asking me as Minister of Agriculture and Food Security at the time, what can be done to help them expand what they were doing. And that was a Saturday morning. And I went back to the ministry the Monday at our regular management meetings, and I spoke to the team, and I asked the permanent secretary to let us work on developing what we had been discussing prior to my visit, which is a project that we have launched called Project Care. It is under that project, sir, and the Honourable Member for St. George South spoke about it at length, but it's under that project that we were able to bring along people even through the pandemic period where the country was in lockdown. And I think it is significant to note that just as the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest is actually hands-on with what is taking place in his constituency, to the extent that things are not left to go adrift, and therefore his presence and involvement with the project is what is making this project a good example of what Project Care can be, and he should be commended for that. The other project that I looked at, and this was long before I went to St. Michael Northwest, was one in St. James South. And that project at the time also revealed to me what we can do in order for us to be able to enfranchise people within the community, but at the same time provide an opportunity for people to benefit in many ways. And when I speak to benefit in many ways, sir, I don't only speak to the actual delivery of the produce from a farm, but there are certain things that you tack on that have either an economic benefit or an employment benefit. And so the establishment of the chicken coop for poultry farming that I saw at St. James South, and the establishment of the types of farms that they were building from the, what you call them, the deckings, the pallets, showed me that there can be enormous creativity in being able to do community farming alongside commercial farming. A lot of the times people believe that agriculture only comprises of commercial activity, when in truth, in fact, there are certain projects within communities that have benefits that we really need at this ethos. And so, Mr. Speaker, those two projects stand out with me, the one at St. James South and the one at St. Michael Northwest, where I am happy to report that I do fully support the vesting of this 3.35 acres of land in the Barbados Agriculture Development and Marketing Corporation, or BADMC, for the purpose of this Project Care improvement. Now, Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Member for St. James South, for St. George South, spoke to the LAIRS project. And I would like to address the LAIRS project with every sincere sinew in my body. That project started probably around 2021, where we had to do a lot of infrastructure work. That infrastructure work, sir, involved mobilizing material to put in roads. And I'd like to speak to this for a bit because right across Barbados, we're having challenges with farms, people not being able to access their farms when we get heavy rainfall. And due to the vagaries of climate change, sir, I think we have reached the stage where if we are going to engage efficiently in open field agriculture, we have to face the hardcore reality. Gone are the days when we could predict rainfalls, and gone are the days where certain areas we were almost certain wouldn't get flooded out. We have seen a different type of weather pattern, and therefore you will find that certain areas that might have been able to withstand flooding can no longer do so. And the ministry, with the work that is being done at the BADMC, we have undertaken responsibility for making sure that good infrastructure is in place to make sure farmers can still access their land when it rains, and particularly when it rains heavily. Now, this is very important because we have had cases where farmers had gone out to the fields and got stuck and couldn't move for days, and in some instances had to get heavy equipment to help them to move. And in order for us to address this, we thought it necessary to put in good infrastructure. Now, I have to say to you that the Lears project, which is 77 acres, that required good infrastructure, took some time in order for us to get the infrastructure in. But equally, Mr. Speaker, we forged ahead with doing the infrastructure and the reservoir for the 21 million gallons of water. But there is no way we were going to allow for us to capture water in that catchment area without having it properly treated. And that treatment plant also took time to put up. The construction company that is responsible for putting it up, we worked with them. But there was a period when we were getting excess rainfall that was sometimes very unpredictable, sir. And that made it literally impossible at times to do work. And therefore, you'll find that the infrastructure got delayed because there's no way you can put heavy equipment on soggy land to make it worse, or to change the scope of works to the extent that you will have to invest more in order to repair the damage that was done. And then we reached the point where we had to do the installation of the pumping system, and after that, the testing, all of which we have done. We've completed most of the testing last week. And during the testing, we came up with some leaks, and we had to get those fixed. And the installation of what is the first time for Barbados will be smart meters that allows for farmers, as I've mentioned several times before in this honorable chamber, to be able to pre-purchase their water supply, which is the first time. So a farmer would know how much water he requires, or how many gallons of water he requires on a daily basis, and can plan his budget to pre-purchase that water. This, Mr. Speaker, sir, I think is a very significant move in making a difference in the life of farmers. And I'm saying this, sir, against the backdrop of knowing full well that there are times when farmers run into arrears when you use a post-paid system, simply because of the many different management issues, first of all, and I am not shying away from that at this stage, because I think the government has done a lot to move small farmers forward. And if we do not have a brutally frank conversation about it, we find ourselves in a position where people have a perception that the government is to do everything. And managing your farm and paying your bills should be the full responsibility of anybody that is getting assistance from the government to get started. And so in my conversation going forward, sir, I will not be shy about speaking to this issue because it is something that we have to take control of. And the smart meter system will be one of the methods that we will be using to make sure people understand that whilst we are prepared to help you and to invest in you, that the way forward, you must also invest in yourself and treat your farming activity the same way you treat a business selling food, drinks, or anything else, sir. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to note that, yes, we've started the allocation process. We did invite the farmers out to Lears in February of this year to show them their lots. And we are now in a position to have them come out, the commercial farmers, to start their planting. Mr. Speaker, I'm also happy that we will be, in the next 2 weeks, be able to have the allotment gardens already and the irrigation to those allotment gardens prepared as well, and to get those farmers moving. But, Mr. Speaker, this Lears project, sir, is about a first example of what we can do in order, one, to do a combination of the Farmers Empowerment and Enfranchisement Drive, the FEED program, alongside Project CARE. And this is the model we are replicating across Barbados. Once we are able to replicate this, I believe we will go a long way in motivating communities to participate in allotment garden or community farming. Now, Mr. Speaker, there are a number of variables at play here that we need to address, and we need to address them frontally. If we are going to have any success in these projects, it cannot only be dependent on the BADMC and its extension officers, but it must continue to get the hands-on support of every MP that has introduced a project. Because once we are doing that, the energy and the motivation will be there in order for people to stick to what they're doing. Invariably, what happens, you will find people all excited about things that they hear about and about what they have conjured up equally in their mind based on what they have heard. Communication, we all know, those of us who have been exposed to any training on communication will know that what has been said and what the person received may be two completely different things. And that is the reason why we have to be hands-on. Now, Mr. Speaker, I believe that this can all be replicated across Barbados. And I am mindful of my responsibility to also get involved and come out and see what is happening. Now, I have, on more than one occasion, toured the Pine Basin with the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central. And we have looked at a project there, and I am sure she will speak to this. I'm absolutely sure. But I wish to urge the Honourable Member now for St. George South to do exactly what he has done this morning to make sure we can also move that project forward for the Honourable Member of St. Michael South Central. On my way to school on mornings to take my daughter to her school, I pass there and I look at the area, and with a heavy heart, I keep saying, I hope we will soon get to this project so that it does not become overgrown again. And I sincerely mean that, Honourable Member, but I will really urge the member for St. George South to help us to be in a position to be able to develop that project. On the other side, to the east of that project, or to the north if you want to call it northeast, there's the Pine Basin project, which we all know. The Pine Basin project we are also developing. A lot of cultivation has taken place there, and we are doing a similar thing to what we did at Lears as well. So that Pine Basin, fortunately for us, already has its water supply and irrigation system. But you will find that when it rains heavily, the area becomes completely flooded. And this is a problem which we face there. We have engaged the relevant ministry to have the drainage unit work with us to make sure we can get this drainage problem settled. And we have agreed to introduce in a catchment zone. We've also agreed to introduce allotment gardens as well, Mr. Speaker, similar to what we're doing at Lears, to make sure those MPs in the St. Michael corridor will be able to have access to land to help their constituents do projects in agriculture. Now, I feel very strong about this, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I strongly believe that if we can get these going, we can address the issues within the St. Michael area in terms of enfranchisement of our people and providing opportunities for employment that they will not otherwise be able to get fast enough. And therefore, the project, sir, that we are looking at, we will also seek to introduce the smart meters. We're also going to introduce that aspect of Project Care, where people will get 5,000 to 10,000 square feet of land, and at the same time give commercial farmers an opportunity to have 1 or 2 acres of land. If you drive past the Pine Basin area right now, you will see that good farming activity is taking place there. We have been able to bring it back, though not fully. We've been able to clean up all the garbage that people would indiscriminately go there and dump. And we've been able to settle on how that project is going to be done, where we would put a total 43 acres of commercial farming there. We have 33 acres already established, and another 10 is to come on board. And then, as I said, the commercial plots will be mostly 1 and 2 acre plots. We are hoping to be able to empower 21 farmers to do the commercial farming. And then we are going to do 2 acres that will be broken down in 5,000 square foot, and 4 acres in 10,000 square feet, giving us a total of 17 farmers for allotment gardening. Now, Mr. Speaker, we can put the project in place. We can also allocate the land. We can send the extension officers out to work with the people. But we need another approach similar to the one of the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest to give it energy, give it life. We need an approach similar to the Honourable Member of St. James South to give it energy and give it life. And Mr. Speaker, sir, if we can do this and work with our people, I guarantee you, Mr. Speaker, sir, that this government will remain as is for another term. Because what people don't want handouts. As the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest spoke so eloquently about, people actually want to be able to do it themselves, but you must hang in there with them and help them along. We know that human beings are creatures of habit, and once they can do it and they feel good about it and see the results of it, then you can pull back a bit. But you still have to keep that jaundiced eye out, because people also get tired and lose motivation. Now, Mr. Speaker, this Project Care, is one that I believe the Honourable Member for St. Michael East would have been championing when he was Minister of the Environment. Though not pulled together as a structured project, his voice was always there for the enfranchisement of those people within communities to be able to help themselves grow their own food. And one day while sitting in the members' room, he said to me, he read a book that actually contained a project like this, and that if we were to take COVID seriously, and if we were to look at supply chain logistics and the challenges that we are facing, a project like this is exactly what this country needs. I am happy to report that the country does not only have the project, but they also have activities going on within Project Care across Barbados. Sir, to date, we have had the support of the private sector, and I know the Honourable Member for St. George South called for more support. But the private sector took us through, again, the most difficult times that we have had to face in this country by providing 8,000 baby chicks for us to distribute to small farmers and people who are most vulnerable in our communities to be able to have a chance to raise a few chicks and to be able to either feed themselves or share with family or even sell some of them, sir. And we still have that support from the private sector. Mr. Speaker, sir, the implements to do backyard gardening or community farming on less than an acre of land, we don't need a tractor and a plow, and I have said this long ago. Why are you going to move a tractor and a plow to somebody who wants to do backyard farming? How are they going to do it? But what you need is the implements, just like my grandmother did. A fork and a hoe, a garden hose, a spray can, a watering can. Those are the things that you need. And you bring out people within the communities as well to be able to attach to a water supply, shared arrangement between everybody, so that they can also participate, but at the same time have fellowship. And how many times have I said this? The hardcore reality of all of this, sir, is that we need to take a new approach at representation, sir. And that new approach is actually rolling up the sleeves, getting on the ground, participating with people, showing off your projects, sir. And the Honourable Member for St. George South spoke about having a competition. But as I speak, sir, we are also working with ICA, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation and Agriculture, to do exactly that, to put together a project where we can allow people to challenge each other across the communities. We're looking at Independence Day, which is a very significant date for us, to be able to do an awards ceremony and award people for participating in Project CARE. Project CARE, sir, will soon see the launch of what we call the Green Machine, an aquaponics system that would allow for people and communities to be able to have a project that allows for them to harvest tilapia and vegetables at the same time, using a revolving system where you use the nitrates from the water to provide fertilizer for the plants and give you an opportunity to have a system at home that you can also use. These systems can be placed in a garage, in a patio, in the backyard, and Dr. Charleston Braffett, who is the former Director General of ICA, is actually spearheading this project. Mr. Speaker, I am excited about it, because if we can give out 30 of these systems, 10 of these systems in 30 constituencies, then we are looking at giving out 300 systems across Barbados to allow for Barbadians to do aquaponics on a small enough scale that they can feed themselves and participate in community activity as well as part of Project CARE. Sir, there can be no greater empowerment than being able to allow for people to have access to systems that allow for them to feed themselves and their family. And Mr. Speaker, I will speak a little bit about the feed program. I note the comments in the press. This honourable member does not chase things that he sees in the press when they make absolutely no sense. And I really don't give oxygen to things that don't make sense. The Farmers Empowerment and Enfranchisement Drive is a project that the ministry created. Lands were identified, and we identified a project that would allow for us to train 2,000 people. It was a settled arrangement. We allow for people to have access to land with startup kits. Sir, the project started in 2019. I don't like to repeat this, but I must. In 2020, the project stopped. Why? Because of COVID. In 2021, the project, once we started to start it back, we couldn't continue. Why? Because of COVID. If you are honest with yourself, sir, it is easy to check and see why we have not reached our target. Because you can't reach it when you can't get people out in the field to do all the work. And so we fell behind on the target, but doesn't mean the target will not be achieved. The other thing is that we are running into more drought periods. When we started the project, we anticipated that we would have placed people on land where we would be able to provide water. We started the process of providing water, sir. The dams that we've produced, the one at River, we're supposed to have a phase 2 to that. The dam at Lears, sir. The bore testing at Mount Poyer, sir. All of these are the things that we are supposed to do. There's no need whatsoever for anybody to question whether or not the feed program is going to be a success, because it shall be as long as we continue to do the work that we are doing. But I will never fool myself or never be so disingenuous to believe that I have greater control over the universe and I can stop all of what was taking place. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to make it abundantly clear that I cannot lend voice to foolishness. I really cannot, sir. And I owe no explanation to anyone except those who I serve, sir. And I know well who I'm serving. Now, Mr. Speaker, the feed program in itself, we have to face reality. There are some dynamics that I cannot change. There are people who have full-time jobs who have applied for land under the feed program. It has been allocated to them. But because of their full-time commitment to their job, they're not able to produce at a rate that we want. And we have taken a decision. We will comply in allowing you to have the land. But if within a certain period of time, the land is not in production, we are moving to the next person. And that next person may very well be the person next to your lot that has demonstrated an appetite for production. And this, to my mind, represents the fairest way to move forward. Because if a person can demonstrate to me that they're coming into this project and able to produce, sir, my next obligation to that person is to say, produce more. And that is where I am going. There are several people I've said to the BADMC, when you interview the people, find out from them what is the employment status, sir. And once you find out that, then you can make an informed decision. I have no problems with people in full-time employment doing agriculture. But if you're not proposing that the land is going to be in production by a certain time, and you can bring the resources to make it work for you, sir, then invariably what you're doing is putting me in a position where I know for sure my target will not be reached. So these are the dynamics that we face. And I am prepared, sir, to stand by what I am doing. I think we've done tremendous work in the ministry. Each time I speak, I have to recognize the work done through the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Nutritional Security in Barbados. Because when I compare it to the days prior to when we came to government, sir, none of what I'm doing was taking place. There ain't nobody right now in Barbados that can tell you that any government took the initiative to supply them with 12,000-gallon water tanks to get through the drought period, sir. There ain't nobody that can tell you that the government at its own cost is putting in infrastructure, sir, around fields for people to be able to access their lands during the rainy period, sir. There ain't nobody that can tell you that the government prior to this one was clearing land and giving people startup kits, sir, even as far as giving them planting material to get going, sir. There ain't none. And Mr. Speaker, there ain't none that ran a program that trained people to teach them not only just to plant, but to understand what a business looked like and how it works, sir. So when I hear the voices of discord, I laugh. And I laugh because I know that given the work we are doing in the ministry, we are laser-like focused on making sure we get our work done. I know there are those who are going to come and whisper. Many will go and complain about things they don't like. I understand. But there are always two sides to a story, sir. And therefore, I recognize that my responsibility is to stay focused and to work with my team. And I really want to thank my permanent secretary and the entire team for the work they are doing, and the support they're giving me, sir. And I wish, Mr. Speaker, to assure this honorable chamber that for as long as we stay focused on what we are doing and continue to deliver, we will reach our final destination. I'm obliged to you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for St. John.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this bill on several levels. I remember sometime in the past, in a different capacity, I would have visited the area in Black Rock, trying to facilitate some youngsters from said area in agriculture under a project called Project Oasis. And I'm pleased, Mr. Speaker, that the honorable member from St. George South would have triggered an opportunity for those youngsters on the blocks at Black Rock. Mr. Speaker, you know, I constantly hear echoes from the past in relation to Project Oasis and how Project Oasis provided men on the blocks with weed whackers and lawnmowers that were sold immediately. But I am pleased, Mr. Speaker, to say to this chamber that several youngsters across this country would have benefited from that initiative called Project Oasis at the time. And a proactive Barbados Labour Party government is again seeking to empower those youngsters who are on the blocks all across this country. And we have started a new initiative called Project Dawn that is seeking to provide, as the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest mentioned, a second chance to move their life in a positive direction. And a proactive Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, would have provided funds in my budget at the ministry to ensure that those individuals who oftentimes are seen as being up to nefarious acts are given a second chance. And unlike most people in this country, I will continue to refuse the notion that all the blocks in this country are negative and that only those same nefarious acts take place on the blocks. Because I have been there for more than 4 years interacting with those brothers all across the country. And shortly, I will be taking a paper to Cabinet to highlight the work of the Block Committee. A committee that was restarted in January last year, well, sorry, not January, during the course of last year since I went to the ministry, a committee that is seeking to empower those youngsters. And Mr. Speaker, there's several initiatives under Project Dawn, and Project Dawn is the new project that is replacing Project Oasis in this country. And we have held discussions with the SJPI, Barbados Community College, the Vocational Training Board, to provide an opportunity for those youngsters to enter those institutions and obtain certification at the same level as those persons who would be required to enter with 4 CXCs and 5 CXCs. And I could share with this chamber this morning, Mr. Speaker, the fact that at present, 35 inmates at Dodds are currently involved in programs under another initiative from my ministry, the Next Step training, that will allow those individuals to exit the prison system with an opportunity to either seek employment or start their own business. So this initiative this morning, this bill this morning, that will be pointed in a direction of helping youngsters on the blocks is a welcome initiative from 3 or so ministries are involved: the Ministry of Housing, the Ministry of Agriculture, and the Ministry of Youth. And we will continue, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that all across this country, technical assistance that can be provided to those youngsters that will buttress the one that is coming from the Ministry of Agriculture will be put in place to ensure that those youngsters who are on the blocks across Barbados have a fighting opportunity and a fighting chance to succeed. And, Mr. Speaker, I would only ask the member for St. George South, because it was reported to me that there's some land in St. Andrew, Belle Plaine to be exact, owned by the church. And I've asked, we've written way back then, seeking permission to use the land at that location for those guys who are on the blocks in Belle Plaine. To date, almost 13 years later, it is difficult to get permission from the church for those guys to engage in constructive activities at that particular location. But we will press on, and my ministry will continue to press and to seek support to ensure that those youngsters can get involved in farming as well. Sorry? It will come to you, Minister. It will come to you. And one of the things, Mr. Speaker, that the Minister of Agriculture did not mention just now, and I will continue to mention, that he is greening St. John. Because in a similar vein to what is happening with those youngsters at the blocks in St. Michael Northwest, I have youngsters on the blocks in St. John that is farming at Wakefield under an initiative called Project Phoenix. And I want to thank the minister for his engagement, for the fact that he came out and did the site visits, and those guys are involved. Mr. Speaker, there's a lot of money involved in agriculture. And I have been trying in my own constituency to enlighten those individuals about the availability of land and what can happen if they take the first step. Because if they take the first step, Mr. Speaker, I am prepared to take that second step with them. So I am not going to be long, but just to say that this government continued to be proactive as it relates to our young people, proactive in relation to different projects that are coming to empower them, proactive in making sure that those youngsters who would have made a mistake, that there's an opportunity to recover, to provide them with a second chance to reintegrate into society and become the type of citizens that we all know that they can become. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 2:15, 2:15 this afternoon.
The question is that this honourable chair be suspended until 2:15 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 2:15 p.m.
I personally wrote